Unit 731, 1942. The cold wind swept across the barren fields of Pingfang, carrying the faint scent of smoke and the metallic tang of fear that seemed to cling to every breath. The sun had barely begun to rise when a group of prisoners, men and women, were herded toward the infamous complex of Unit 731. They were labeled as enemies, spies, or simply unfortunate civilians caught in the path of the Japanese military. Their fates sealed before they even crossed the compound gates. Each step on the muddy, uneven paths was heavy with dread, every clatter of boots on the wooden planks echoing ominously. The fences around the compound, topped with cruelly sharp barbed wire, seemed to close in like the walls of a prison designed for torment rather than containment. Inside, rows of sterilized instruments gleamed under harsh, flickering lamps, and the shadows of medical staff moved with chilling precision. The prisoners, many of them unaware of the horrors awaiting them, clutched at each other, whispered faint reassurances that could not mask the terror in their eyes. Every corridor and room seemed imbued with a sense of inescapable dread. The compound built to test human limits in ways that defied morality and reason. From the very first moments, it became horrifyingly clear that Unit 731 was a laboratory of death. Prisoners were subjected to experiments that went beyond cruelty, often conducted without anesthesia or consent. Doctors injected deadly pathogens, plague, anthrax, cholera, directly into the veins of healthy individuals to observe the progression of disease, while victims writhed in agony, fever spiking, limbs stiffening, and their bodies deteriorating under the relentless watch of clinical observers. Others were exposed to extreme temperatures, some submerged in ice-cold water until hypothermia set in, others forced to endure blistering heat, their skin burning, sweat streaming down their faces, all in the name of testing human endurance. Surgical procedures were performed with mechanical detachment, no pain relief offered, as doctors dissected, excised, and experimented on living flesh. The medical staff moved with a terrifyingly methodical rhythm, recording every reaction, every cough, every shiver, treating human bodies as mere objects, data points in a cruelly devised experiment. The compound itself seemed to pulse with anguish, every corridor echoing with screams, every doorway shadowed with suffering, as the cries of the victims were punctuated only by the cold, precise notations of researchers who had abandoned compassion entirely. The psychological terror inflicted upon the prisoners was as deliberate as the physical suffering. Families were separated immediately upon arrival, their members thrown into different cells or treatment rooms, ensuring that fear, despair, and isolation would intensify the horrors of each experiment. Whispers of resistance or hope were crushed quickly. A glance between a parent and child could invite punishment or accelerate the severity of the procedure. The compound's architecture amplified the prisoner's sense of hopelessness. Long hallways, barred windows, and observation rooms allowed the staff to monitor every movement, leaving no corner unobserved, no action unrecorded. Even those who survived the initial injections, infections, or temperature tests carried with them a deep, lasting fear, the kind that lingered in their bones and haunted their dreams. The prisoners learned quickly that survival depended not on courage, but on chance, on the whims of the staff, and on the arbitrary schedules of experiments that seemed to exist only to prolong suffering. Disease research at Unit 731 reached horrifying extremes, demonstrating the full scope of human cruelty under the guise of science. Fleas carrying plague were intentionally released into living subjects. Cholera, typhoid, and other deadly bacteria were deliberately introduced into healthy bodies, with each symptom meticulously recorded. The experiments often led to prolonged deaths, organs failing one by one, while staff observed, measured, and processed, and documented without the slightest trace of empathy. Prisoners became living test tubes, their reactions cataloged as data, their humanity stripped away by ideology, ambition, and military necessity. Some subjects survived only to be dissected later, providing further information on how disease progressed through the human body. Tens of thousands perished under these conditions, a statistic masked by secrecy and obfuscation. The meticulous records kept by Unit 731's researchers provide chilling evidence of the scale and methodical nature of these atrocities, a testament to the horrors possible when science is divorced from morality. Even amidst relentless cruelty, glimpses of human resilience occasionally appeared. Prisoners shared what little food they had, offered whispered words of encouragement, or silently held hands for comfort, small acts of defiance that preserved their dignity against impossible odds. Yet these moments of humanity were fleeting, almost invisible against the enormity of suffering surrounding them. Survivors would later recount these small gestures as the threads that allowed them to maintain a sense of self amidst overwhelming despair. The psychological trauma endured at Unit 731 was profound and enduring. Nightmares, paranoia, and mistrust haunted the survivors, their memories of agony forever etched into the psyche. Yet, through survivor testimonies, archival records, and historical research, the world has come to understand the extent of these horrors, ensuring that the victims are remembered and the lessons of Unit 731 continue to resonate as a warning to future generations. Twins and family members were often selected for some of the most horrifying and meticulously planned experiments at Unit 731. In many cases, one twin would be deliberately infected with deadly pathogens or mutilated in gruesome procedures, while the other twin was kept intact to observe differences in response, resilience, and physiological survival. Lethal injections, organ removal, exposure to toxic chemicals, and deliberate wounding became routine procedures, conducted with clinical detachment by doctors and assistants. Every detail was meticulously recorded: the growth of tumors, changes in skin coloration, shifts in organ weight, the progression of illness, and the body's reactions to extreme trauma. Victims suffered unimaginable pain, some surviving only days or weeks under these conditions, their weakened bodies still meticulously documented, while others died quickly, their corpses dissected immediately for further analysis. Each act of cruelty was justified under the guise of military necessity and pseudo-scientific research, a chilling reminder of how ideology and ambition could strip away the humanity of the living. The suffering was not limited to the victims themselves. Psychological torment was an integral part of Unit 731's methodology. Prisoners were often forced to witness the pain of others, their siblings, spouses, or children, amplifying terror and despair. Families were torn apart, friendships severed, and the concept of safety was rendered meaningless. The design of the compound intensified this psychological pressure. Long hallways, stark observation rooms, and claustrophobic isolation chambers ensured that escape, solace, or reprieve was impossible. The staff maintained strict routines and schedules, executing each experiment with a meticulous air of authority that added to the perception of inescapable control. Even those who survived the initial procedures carried the psychological scars for life, haunted by the screams, the sight of loved ones writhing in agony, and the impersonal, clinical attention given to their suffering. The sense of omnipresent observation and inescapable cruelty reinforced a state of constant terror. Beyond the immediate physical suffering, The methods employed were designed to break the human spirit. Prisoners were denied any sense of autonomy, forced to comply under threat of further harm or death. The constant presence of guards and medical staff meant that each movement was monitored, every reaction recorded, every display of resistance punished. Observers and researchers would often move silently, their notebooks clutched tightly as they documented fever spikes, body convulsions, and signs of exhaustion, treating human beings as nothing more than experimental instruments. These meticulous records, created with clinical precision, later became some of the most damning evidence of the systematic dehumanization that occurred within Unit 731. The cruelty extended not only to the body, but to the mind, leaving survivors to navigate a world where hope was deliberately stripped away. In addition to the physiological and psychological torment, there were deliberate acts of extreme sadism designed to maximize fear and suffering. Twins would sometimes be forced into experiments simultaneously, one suffering while the other was subjected to observation in a separate chamber. In some instances, one twin would die as the other was made to watch, observing every twitch, every cry, and every sign of pain. The compound became a theater of horror, where cruelty was rationalized as science and suffering became data. Prisoners had little opportunity to recover physically or emotionally. Each experiment built upon the last, compounding pain and fear. The atmosphere was one of calculated dread, an environment engineered to break both body and spirit, leaving a trail of trauma that would last for decades after liberation. Despite the relentless cruelty, small acts of human resilience occasionally emerged, fleeting as they were. Prisoners might whisper comfort to a sibling, exchange scraps of food, or hold hands to maintain some connection to life and memory beyond the experiments. These brief moments, while overshadowed by horror, provided a fragile thread of humanity in a world otherwise dominated by suffering and dehumanization. The experiences of twins and family members at Unit 731 serve as a chilling example of what can happen when science is divorced from morality, illustrating both the extremes of cruelty and the persistent strength of the human spirit. The stories of survival, though rare, endure as testaments to resilience, bearing witness to the unimaginable suffering inflicted within the compound and the lessons history demands we remember. Disease research at Unit 731 reached levels of cruelty that remain almost unimaginable. Plague-infested fleas were deliberately released into human subjects, forcing their tiny bodies to incubate and spread the disease. Cholera, typhoid, and other deadly pathogens were injected into healthy individuals, often without consent, to monitor the progression of illness in real time. Prisoners were treated not as people, but as living test tubes, their every symptom meticulously measured, recorded, and analyzed by doctors and researchers with chilling precision. The effects of chemical weapons were similarly tested, with gases and toxins introduced to observe bodily reactions, burns, respiratory failure, and death. Each day brought new horrors as the prisoners endured extreme pain, dehydration, and infection. Tens of thousands of civilians and captured soldiers perished under the pretext of research, leaving behind a staggering human toll that highlighted the lethal combination of ideology, militarism, and pseudoscience. The meticulous documentation of suffering, fever charts, and autopsy reports became a grotesque ledger of human lives systematically destroyed in the name of science. The scale of horror extended far beyond physical suffering. Families were torn apart, and friends forced to witness the torment of each other, creating a psychological landscape of fear and hopelessness that penetrated every aspect of daily life in the compound. Prisoners could not escape the gaze of guards and researchers. Long observation rooms, isolated chambers, and constant surveillance ensured that even the smallest action could be punished. Children, when present, were subjected to the same procedures as adults, magnifying the psychological cruelty. Observers meticulously noted every twitch, every shiver, every expression of agony, leaving survivors to endure not only excruciating pain, but the knowledge that their suffering was being logged, quantified, and studied. The mental toll was staggering. Terror, anxiety, and despair became daily companions, as prisoners learned quickly that hope was a dangerous illusion. Despite the relentless cruelty, small acts of humanity occasionally emerged like fragile sparks in the darkness. Prisoners would share tiny scraps of food, whisper comforting words, or hold the hands of the dying, offering brief relief and a semblance of connection. These moments, though fleeting, carried profound significance, preserving a thread of dignity and empathy in a place engineered to crush both. Some survivors later described these acts as lifelines. Small victories that allowed them to retain their sense of self amidst overwhelming dehumanization. Even the smallest gestures, an encouraging glance, a whispered warning, or a shared smile, were acts of resistance, defying the totalitarian control of the camp and the ideology that sought to strip them of humanity. The long-term impact on survivors was devastating. Psychological trauma, including nightmares, anxiety, and deep-seated mistrust, followed them long after liberation. The memory of screams, dissection tables, and the systematic cruelty of Unit 731 lingered, shaping the rest of their lives. Yet through survivor testimonies, historical research, and recovered documents, the world has come to understand the true extent of the atrocities committed at Pingfang. The evidence ensures that these crimes are remembered, the victims honored, and the lessons of history applied to prevent future horrors. The meticulous records of suffering and death provide not only documentation of unimaginable cruelty, but a testament to human resilience, empathy, and the necessity of ethical vigilance in all scientific endeavors. The story of Unit 731 remains a stark warning of what can happen when scientific inquiry is divorced from morality. The experiments, cruel and methodical, demonstrate the catastrophic consequences of ideology overriding human compassion. They also highlight the resilience of the human spirit, as survivors carried forward their memories, bearing witness to atrocities so extreme they almost defy comprehension. Even as the years pass, the lessons of Unit 731 continue to resonate, reminding us that the protection of human life, empathy, and ethical responsibility must never be compromised. In studying this history, the world is forced to confront the depths of human cruelty, the value of remembrance, and the unyielding need to safeguard dignity against the darkest impulses of power and ideology. In the aftermath of World War II, the shadows of Unit 731's atrocities lingered long after Japan's surrender, yet many of the compound's members managed to evade prosecution. Shielded by secrecy surrounding their experiments and the emerging geopolitical complexities of the early Cold War, some researchers were quietly absorbed into post-war scientific and military projects, their crimes overlooked in the name of strategic advantage. Despite this, historians, educators, journalists, and human rights advocates have painstakingly reconstructed the full extent of the activities within Unit 731. Survivor testimonies, wartime documents, and painstaking research reveal the horrifying reality faced by tens of thousands of victims, ensuring that their suffering and the scale of the crimes are not forgotten. Each account paints a picture of calculated cruelty, where ideology and militarism fused with pseudoscience to create a laboratory of human suffering, leaving indelible scars on history, memory, and conscience. These narratives serve as a stark reminder of the consequences when scientific ambition is divorced from morality. The experiments conducted within Unit 731 demonstrated in the most horrifying ways imaginable the catastrophic results of subordinating human life to ideology, power, and unchecked curiosity. From the deliberate infection of prisoners with deadly pathogens to the freezing, burning, and dissection of living humans, every action was framed as research. Every life treated as expendable data. Yet the testimonies of survivors and the meticulous records recovered post-war offer invaluable insights into both the depths of human cruelty and the resilience of those who endured. The lessons drawn from these atrocities emphasize that ethical oversight, informed consent, and the protection of human life must remain at the core of all medical and scientific endeavors, no matter the circumstances or pressures. The ethical breaches of Unit 731 became a driving force in shaping modern standards for human experimentation. The horrors witnessed there, combined with the Nuremberg trials and the subsequent creation of the Nuremberg Code, established the foundation for principles that safeguard human dignity today. Informed consent, voluntary participation, and the prioritization of human welfare above scientific curiosity are non-negotiable pillars of research ethics. Designed explicitly to prevent repetition of such atrocities, the story of Unit 731, therefore, is not only a record of suffering, but a cautionary tale, illustrating the thin line that separates scientific discovery from systematic abuse. It challenges contemporary audiences to critically examine the ethical implications of research and to uphold the rights and humanity of every individual subjected to experimentation. For contemporary audiences, the story of Unit 731 provides both a sobering account of history and a call to moral vigilance. It is a stark illustration of how knowledge and power, when wielded without empathy and ethical constraints, can lead to unimaginable suffering. Yet, amidst the horror, the endurance of survivors stands as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. Their courage in recounting the horrors they endured ensures that the lessons of Unit 731 remain alive, a moral guidepost in a world where the pursuit of progress can sometimes overshadow humanity. By confronting the full reality of these events, societies can recognize the importance of education, remembrance, and ethical accountability, ensuring that science serves humanity rather than ideology or cruelty. Ultimately, the legacy of Unit 731 transcends history books. It is a living warning, a moral compass, and a reminder that ethical responsibility must govern the pursuit of knowledge. The meticulous documentation of suffering, the testimony of survivors, and the historical records combine to create a chilling yet instructive narrative. They demand reflection, empathy, and the commitment to protect human dignity in every circumstance. As we look back at the horrors perpetrated under the guise of scientific research, the story of Unit 731 endures as a symbol of both caution and hope. Caution against the misuse of power, and hope in the enduring capacity of humans to remember, learn, and act with conscience in the face of past atrocities.